Hello and welcome to another episode of Soundcheck by Support Act. My name is Luke and I'm from Support Act. And today I'm joined by the Honourable Martin Foley, Minister for Creative Industries and Mental Health. Thanks for joining us, Martin.
No worries. Thank you for having me along, Luke.
It's a pleasure. And before we proceed, I want to make sure that everyone who's tuning in today is aware of the Support Act Wellbeing Helpline. This is a national helpline that's established to support people in the music industry and now the broader performing arts in general who are encountering issues with their mental health or have some other kind of issue pertaining to their life in the music industry that they want to discuss with a trained and mental health practitioner. You can call that helpline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on 1-800-959-500. So, Minister Foley, first question for you today as the burning question. What was the first gig you can remember attending?
Well, they kind of all blur into this one long line.
That happens for a lot of people, Martin.
But I grew up in Mornington,
yep.
About 400 metres from the Mornington Youth Club, which is where regularly a whole heap of bands, some who faded into glorious obscurity, but others who didn't. And can't remember who was the first, but I can remember in 78, 79, thereabouts, AC/DC. I can remember Skyhook. I can remember a whole heap of bands. So they're amongst my first there. My earliest kind of recollection of another moving coming up to the Palais. I remember the Irish blues rock guitarist Rory Gallagher having a fantastic concert at the Palais. I don't know how old I was, but that's one that really kind of moves me. So there's some of my
earliest. Ripped out some sticky carpet underfoot for all three of those gigs.
Yes.
So you've obviously got quite a lot on your plate at the moment. There's a lot of talk about people's mental health whilst in isolation, and obviously a lot of talk about the crisis that's kind of hitting the performing arts and the music industry more specifically. So you're keeping busy, but I guess I want to find out, first of all, what's your isolation strategy? Like how and where have you been working and what have been your major challenges with that?
Well, we've taken the whole working from home strategy seriously, and I've been working from home since about the time of the shutdown, really, as we got ready for that. So I'm pretty lucky. My son, my 19-year-old son, is gone from his casual job at Coles Port Melbourne to now being an essential service worker at Coles Port Melbourne. So we just load him up to bring home the food and the veggies. And other than lots and lots of Zooms, WebExes, Skypes, Teams. I didn't know there were so many platforms you could have meetings on, but I've mastered them all. There's a lot on. What we've really learned in this is that with such a heavy blow to so much of what we've taken for granted as a community, it's up to government to lead, to stand up, to both get organisations and communities through the crisis, but also to start to point to recovery.
Well, I can tell you about our story at Support Act about how we first encountered the wave of cancellations and COVID really starting to have an effect. From your perspective, when did you first realise the scale of the impact of COVID-19 was going to have on Victoria's industry?
Well, when the public health emergency was declared in those early weeks of March, and the restrictions on numbers of gatherings, of numbers of people, both indoors and outdoors, started, it was clearly going to get tighter. The alarm bells went off that this was something that was going to have an unprecedented impact. And first and foremost, the way in which all the leadership in the sectors got together and signed up to what was an absolutely devastating blow, but knowing that it had to be done to flatten that curve, to slow the spread of the virus. The creative and cultural sectors particularly live music was first and hardest hit. And when those lights went out, when the venues closed, when museums shut up, when all those kind of blows hit, that's when it really sunk home that this was going to be a devastating series of events that was really going to be a test for us all, and was going to have impacts that perhaps we didn't properly understand, but we've now come to appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can attest to that. Like, Support Act has never seen, as big a demand for our services as we are at the moment, and our helpline is rung off the hook. So yeah, I can definitely reflect that back to you, that it's serious times for the music industry. Now, your government has taken some really great steps. I think, just to use one of your terms, that made a down payment to support the Victorian live music industry. But why do you think it's important to our society that creative industry, specifically our live music industry here in Victoria and broadly around Australia, remains so strong post-COVID-19?
The Australian Bureau of Statistics, when they did their impact assessment of different sectors in March, showed that within a matter of weeks, the majority of creative businesses, particularly live music venues, had stopped trading. A few weeks later, the Grattan Institute did their similar assessment, and the figure had risen to over 70% of businesses have stopped trading, and entities have stopped trading. And then we've seen other problems around how the job keeper and job seeker packages from the Commonwealth, designed for a different kind of community, have missed out so much of the cultural and creative sectors. And we know that that's required us to do a whole range of things. The down payment programs that we've been putting in place have been an important part of that. The $16.8 million package from a couple of weeks ago, the contribution to the Victoria Together campaign, and the $3.25 million associated with that ACME and other agencies can go out and commission different works, some music, some multi-platform works, as we try to create a digital stream of work for people. And as recently as today, the Treasurer announced a package where over 3,000 casuals of largely in venues like the MRC, the Arts Centre, the Geelong Arts Centre, as well as museums, state library, a whole range of cultural institutions who've fallen through other cracks would now be picked up and supported in the equivalent of the JobKeeper program.
Definitely, and that's really fantastic leadership. Great to hear. I mean, we've all been, responding to this unprecedented tragedy, I guess, the best we can. Like, just as a personal thing, you must feel immense responsibility. I mean, you can feel proud of this amazing creative industries. I mean, the fact that in the world, Australia and Victoria specifically is one of the few places where an independent artist can make a living. So you must have that sense of pride, but also a decent sense of responsibility at this time as well, Martin, I'm sure.
Yes, the coming together of our creative community and my mental health portfolios has been a real significant revelation. We know that there's much to be done. In coming days, we're hopeful that National Cabinet will sign off on a national pandemic mental health recovery plan. And we want to make sure that those community-wide services are available to everyone who is feeling everything from increased levels of anxiety, depression, isolation, all the way through to acute mental illness, which is also on the rise. But we know that we've got to tailor that response on the ground at the states to the particular demands of particular communities. And we know that when it comes to the creative communities, that's a very important issue that was pretty big before the COVID pandemic, and I suspect is only going to increase in demand on services, which is why I welcome the support that the Commonwealth has particularly given to Support Act to make sure that you guys are at the forefront of at least that industry coordination and leadership. So right around the country, we can tailor programs that meet the needs of the sector.
Well, yeah, brilliant. Well, obviously, it's helped us do some of the stuff that we really wanted to do as an organisation, and we look forward to being able to expand our services more broadly here in Victoria as well. But just off that, and without having to extract the plug out of you, but what is your advice to people in the music industry, how they can better manage their mental health? Like, what are some of the resources here in Victoria?
Well, this was creative communities were already before this crisis overrepresented in poorer mental health outcomes. Work going back a few years that Victoria University were involved in demonstrated that our creative community, for a whole range of reasons, was overrepresented in poorer outcomes when it came to not just poor mental health outcomes, but overrepresentation in alcohol and drug abuse issues, isolation, precarious employment. This is the original gig economy, and a separation from what might be seen as kind of normal community support networks. So making sure that we've got structures in place that reflect that is so important. And that's really at the heart of why Support Act came into being all those years ago, reflecting the particular needs of a sector and a community that could band together to look after themselves and each other.
Absolutely. And as is always the case, I'm sure that the live music industry will have a part to play in that recovery phase. I mean, what role do you see? Obviously, recently the government's had a partnership with Mushroom, delivering the Sunday night gig, which was fantastic, and that'll be an ongoing thing. But what do you think live music will have, what role it will have in the recovery?
It's going to really amplify the role that it had pre-crisis. So pre-COVID, it was such an important part of the economic, cultural and social life of Victorians. It still has to be, but what we have to now do as we come back into a different world, find ways and means of engagement and delivery of live music in a way that meets the social distancing rules, that learns to live with the coronavirus until such time as we have a treatment or a vaccine. That's going to be a whole range of things that we're going to need to work cooperatively with industry and with the innovators who are at the heart of what the live music has always been about how that operates and how it can also turn a dollar for people, because digitizing and delivering is one thing, but creating the content, monetizing it, turning it into support for the whole ecology of the creative communities, particularly live music and everything that surrounds the musicians and the performers, is going to be a real challenge. We're up for it. We don't know really what that future looks like. If we bring people together, if we resource them appropriately, if we focus on the creatives in particular, back them for innovation, then I'm sure we'll find a way through.